Outlaw Law is brought to you by Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law. Your law firm for life.
Welcome back into the Outlaw Lawyers. Your hosts are Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer, managing partners, Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm, offices conveniently located in Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay-Varina, Gastonia, and now in Morehead City. They're practicing attorneys here in the great state of North Carolina. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate Cassandra Nicholas. Normally with us on the program, she is on assignment this week. If you've got a legal situation you're facing, questions need to be answered, you're scratching your head on something, you can get your information, get your questions answered by calling the firm 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. Leave your contact information, briefly what the call's about, and an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And again, you can always email your questions to the show, questions at theoutlawlawyer.com. All right, Josh, we're going Trump first, I believe.
Yeah, that seemed to be a big news story. So I had a chance to read the indictment. So former President Donald Trump was indicted. You'd have to be living under a rock not to have heard the story, but basically, was it 37? I always forget numbers. 37 counts.
Yeah, it was in the 30s. Yeah, it was upper 30s.
We're gonna round it to 37.
Yeah,
36.8.
So he had a lot of. The theory is he had a lot of classified material that in theory shouldn't have left, the White House or whatever secure place that it's read. And he had it at his residence in the bathroom. There's all his pictures, the bathroom, the closet, what have you. And so that's what happened. And, I was going to say one of the big news stories, depending on how you feel about Trump, right? You've heard the story presented to you in maybe two different ways. One, how come he's being charged and indicted and nobody else is, because you hear all these stories of what the Clintons may have done or what Biden may have done. And so I think that's, that gets presented one way. I think from a lawyer's perspective, you just look at what's on the table. We don't know enough about everything else. So we just look at the indictment and, what we're dealing with that's right in front of us. And I also saw one aspect of the story was how it was difficult for Trump to find an attorney to represent him on these charges. I don't know if you saw that. Did you hear that, Joe?
Yeah, I saw you had a couple of attorneys that withdrew, and which has not been something that's necessarily an uncommon thing. One of the problems, man, in my humble opinion, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. You see this story presented one of two ways, right? And they're so drastically different. Like you'll see someone presenting this as just being like a farcical thing, complete joke. He's going to beat it. It's not serious at all. And then you see the other end of the spectrum, which is like, this is the thing that brings him down. It's terrible, super serious allegations. This is a very, very big deal. And I'm always flabbergasted by the contrast between how heavily politicized these things can be on each side, and how there's so few people that are really just like landing square in the middle, man, and trying to come and do a fair, reasoned, unbiased analysis. It'd be very nice, man, to go and just be able to grab something and know without question, like, look, this is a straight shooter right here I'm reading from, and they're straight shooting me the facts on this bad boy. But it's hard to find, man.
Yeah, I didn't like the story. I didn't like the stories that kind of followed. And the way I saw it reported, most major outlets, is that he was struggling to get an attorney. He was struggling to hire an attorney to defend him on the charges. But this is the kind of case that changes your whole law firm. At the Whitaker and Hamer, we've got 7 offices. We got a lot of attorneys. We handle federal cases. We handle
this one probably not quite big enough for us, man. We probably looking for something. Looking for something a little more high profile.
We throw this one back and wait.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of case if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, look, if former President Trump walked into our office and said, 'Hey, I need you to
Joshua,'" that was my Trump impression.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
This is something you have to dedicate a lot of staff, a lot of resources, and a lot of firms. Most firms wouldn't be able to do that. It would take over your firm. And so I'm not surprised that he's having a hard time finding a private attorney who's willing to step in. And
I think what you're trying to say is that you're not attributing his difficulty to his case being a complete loser, right? Because you've got attorneys that take complete losers every day, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I'm with you. I think there's been an attempt to put a spin on that too, and really there's an attempt to put a spin both ways from each side on this. And I just come back to, I don't like that, man. I'm still looking for that real, reasonable, trustworthy source we can go to and sift through it all.
Well, the charges are definitely very serious. You know, but there's also a lot of defenses to these charges. You know, this is type of federal law that most attorneys don't deal with. We certainly don't deal with it on a daily basis. You're not dealing with classified materials and that kind of thing. So it's an area of law that not a lot of attorneys are familiar with. But they're very serious charges. They obviously carry a lot of jail time, and it's not going to move very slow. This type of case moves fairly quickly. You don't, it's not like a speeding ticket that you can get continued, 4, 5, 6 times.
That's true, and that is true in theory. But I think you will see as much legal wrangling as possible, and there'll be some pretty crafty lawyer work to stretch this out probably longer than you think. But I agree with you in the sense that the allegations in and of themselves, absolutely. Like, I don't think anyone could look at that and just be like, it's no big deal, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to.
It's a pretty big deal.
Even if you're on the side where you believe, and again, I just said we kind of take it as it is, right? We take these charges. Attorneys would immediately start trying to calculate a defense, and what I'm about to say is not a defense. But you look at what he's accused of doing, and it is very serious. Sharing these secrets with people who aren't, don't have the clearance to look at them, and so if any of that's true, that's very serious. It doesn't matter if you think, Hillary Clinton should be charged with something like this because of her email server, or if you think Biden should be charged. Those might be good points.
Yeah, I think
they're going to be irrelevant in the defense of Mr.
it.
Trump.
You nailed it, because it's not that those are irrelevant considerations. Like, you and your buddy sitting around drinking an ice cold brew and just shooting it, talking about how it's so unfair, there's disparate treatment. Like, maybe you're making a valid point potentially, but it has no relevance to the legal defense of the issue. He's been charged with it, right? So you can't go shoot somebody and then another guy that shot somebody but didn't get charged, and you're like, hey, man.
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Because you haven't seen a former president ever indicted or charged with this, and you haven't seen it during an election cycle where, depending on what poll you look at, he's leading.
He's still running, man.
He's still running, and he's leading. It's early, but he's still one of the leading Republican vote getters in polls. And man, it's all going to come to a head about the same time. So we've definitely got some national media stories for a while, but very, very serious stuff. And that's really all you can say. It's very serious charges. The federal government usually doesn't charge you unless they feel really good about their case. We see that even on the local level when we have federal criminal cases down here in Raleigh. You got to take defense very seriously, and it's not good news if you're a fan of him, because it's not something that's easy to beat.
37 is the correct number. Just wanted to make sure we got that out there. So.
Yeah. And if you hadn't, I always encourage people to go to the source, right? We get very comfortable on whatever news outlet that we're reading or listening to or what have you, but the indictment's out there. It's everywhere. You can read the indictment. It's very well written. However you feel about Jack Smith as a special prosecutor, it's well researched. It's well put together. It's worth reading and not just letting someone tell you what's in it, because it's out there, and it's not legalese. They kind of spell it out,
The Outlaw Lawyers, Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer. You can find them at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. Well, you better. They're the managing partners. They're practicing attorneys here in North Carolina, and they have opened up offices conveniently for you. Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay Varina, Gastonia, and now in Morehead City. Again, folks, if you are facing a legal situation, if you've got questions that you need answers to, you can always call Whitaker and Hamer, 800-659-1180. 1186. That's 800-659-1186. Or you can email your questions to the show, questions@theoutlawlawyer.com. Just leave your contact information, briefly what the call's about, and an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And if you email the question to us, we'll answer it on a future program. We're back right after this.